Hello world, time for the Worcester Magic Weather Soaring Forecast. It is today the 26th of January and we're looking at the forecast for tomorrow the 27th. And as we can see, tomorrow we're going to have temperatures up above 30 degrees again, 32, 33. A wind coming in from the west and an inversion that's pushed up to close to 6,000 feet. Looking at the boundary layer wind, this is at 2 o'clock, just to get a picture of what's happening. We can see there's a overall southwesterly flow over the whole of the Western Cape. Coming in from the south and turning in southwesterly onto the front ridges, and coming in from the south onto the easterly ridges, and coming through the Red River Valley a little bit from the northern side. We look at some cloud for tomorrow at 5 o'clock, just to give us an idea of the options. And we can see here at Swellendam there's already some cloud showing, and it's maybe at 3 or 3,500 feet. So we'll take a quick peek at the T5 diagram for Swellendam for 5 o'clock, and you can see it's a little bit low on magic. So easterly might be an option for a early leg, but I think the main task will be to the west and to the north. So let's look at the wind in more detail. This is the surface wind at 2 o'clock on the high resolution chart, and we can see we've got this southerly coming in, turning southwesterly onto the front ridge all the way up past Porterville, and to the east it's coming in onto the ridge at Langeberg from Robertson side through to Worcester, but a little bit broken over here. As you can see, the wind coming through the valley is actually from the northwest, so our options will probably be to launch the grid to Ordenburg, and then there's some lift on Brandbach, and it should start working again on Witzenberg. Zooming out, 2 o'clock surface wind, we can see that it's blowing onto the ridge at Renosterhoek and onto the ridges of the Cederberg Mountains. But the speeds are a little bit low. That one's sitting at about 5 or 6 knots, and on the mountain closer to 10. Going out to 5 o'clock, we can see the wind has picked up quite a lot. We see that it's spurting through the gap past Villiersdorp and through this gap and around from the back of the Riffiesonne Mountains. It's also spurting into the Breda Valley from the northwest side, and we can see we have this northwest flow and this southerly flow and that southwesterly one, and they all sort of meet somewhere in the middle at Worcester. So that's quite interesting. We will have another look at that later. But back to the task, we can zoom out and we can see those surface winds are pushing all the way up to Claver and blowing quite nicely on the Renosterhoek ridge at now at about 10 knots in the late afternoon. So still working and still working well. Looking at the cloud, we see there's cloud to the south of us on the far side of the Riffiesonne Mountains at 2 o'clock. And zooming out, we can see that cloud goes all the way past Swellendam towards George. Looking at some T5 diagrams. Worcester, 5 o'clock, you can see the inversion is pushed up to well over 6,000 feet. A little bit of a wind shear here, but it's still thermic. Tulbach, 2 o'clock. That wind is just under 10 knots straight onto the Witzenberg. And at 5 o'clock you can see this notch of marine air coming in. That's the wind that's pushing in all the way from the the south of Worcester through the gaps and actually reaches Kilbach and affecting it. But the wind is still blowing onto the mountain. Porterville, 2 o'clock, southwesterly, a bit southerly, in thermic up to over 5,000 feet and nearly 10 knots of wind. By 5 o'clock, coming around southerly once again, the wind picking up a bit more, nearly 15 knots, and the inversion is still quite high. So, one more for a bonus. I said we would come back to it. That gap, that space where all the winds meet over Worcester, we seem to have a very interesting convergence line. So when you finished your task tomorrow, you don't have to land. Maybe you can just thermal up and go and have some more fun. And I see there's another convergence indicated going down towards the Rafisona End Mountains. This wind flow up through the gap there is obviously spurting out both ways and triggering that convergence. One more to look at. 11 o'clock in the morning, we can see our temperature is still about 25 degrees and it's not hot enough to start launching. So we will have to wait a little bit again before we can get the grid into the air. It's going to be a good day tomorrow. Some of us flew quite long today, longer than we should have really, and some of us didn't quite fly as long as we actually wanted to. But tomorrow looks like another long, strong day. So fly carefully and enjoy it. We'll talk to you again tomorrow night.